June the 6th, 1944. As the Allied forces assault the beaches of Normandy, Hitler remains inactive. Why is that? Because he is anticipating the arrival of Jack Patterson. However, Patterson's army is nothing but a fabrication. The tanks are made of rubber. The landing vessels are mere stage props. Hitler has been thoroughly deceived by what could be considered the most brilliant military ruse in history. By 1944, the Allies confronted an enormous military obstacle. Nazi Germany had turned the western coastline of Europe into a nearly impenetrable stronghold. The Atlantic Wall, as Hitler named it, extended over 1,600 miles from Norway down to the Spanish border. It was fortified with millions of landmines, countless concrete bunkers, artillery positions, and trenches designed to tear apart any attacking force. Despite this, the Allies were forced to break through if they wanted to bring down Nazi Germany. The Dieppe raid of 1942 had already sounded a harsh alarm. Of the 6,000 Allied soldiers, primarily Canadian, nearly 60% were killed, injured, or taken prisoner. German artillery stationed on the adjacent cliffs brutally decimated them. The shoreline was strewn with fallen bodies. Dieppe showed that attempting to invade heavily defended coastlines could result in disaster. Military analysts estimated that a complete invasion might suffer up to 100,000 casualties within the first hours, provided the Germans were prepared. David Evans, the commanding general, even drafted a statement accepting full responsibility should the landings fail. This note, dated June the 5th, 1944, stayed in his pocket as the attack launched, quietly symbolizing how risky and uncertain the operation truly was. Hitler had stationed 58 divisions throughout Western Europe. Even more threatening was the Germans' ability to swiftly relocate reinforcements. Armored divisions could crush any established beachhead before it had a chance to strengthen. Field Marshal Erich Ross, responsible for the Atlantic Wall, bluntly expressed the gravity of the situation, saying, "The first 24 hours of the invasion will be critical. For the Allies and for Germany, it will be the longest day." Complete surprise was out of the question. German reconnaissance planes captured images of British ports nearly every day. Their spies monitored the buildup of Allied forces. The only uncertainty was the exact location of the strike. This doubt offered the Allies a slim opportunity. Although hiding the invasion was impossible, perhaps they could convince Hitler to look elsewhere. To achieve this, they had to divert German troops away from Normandy and make Calais, the closest point to England, seem like the real target. Meanwhile, the actual assault would come ashore on the beaches of Normandy, where defenses were a bit weaker. By the spring of 1944, southern England had transformed into a huge military base. Almost 3 million soldiers, supported by thousands of ships and aircraft, prepared for the offensive. Country roads were clogged with military vehicles. Tent encampments spread out over the countryside. Ammunition stores, fuel depots, and camouflage barracks sprang up overnight. The Germans observed this accumulation, but remained unsure of its destination. Allied leaders understood that sheer military strength alone would not suffice. They required a deception that was profound, multi-layered, and convincing enough to trick Hitler into shifting his forces away from Normandy and keeping them there long enough for the actual invasion to succeed. British intelligence proposed a daring plan: fabricate an entire fictitious army ready to attack Calais. Every intelligence channel the Germans trusted would be fed this false information, including aerial photographs, intercepted radio transmissions, spies, and even carefully crafted diplomatic leaks. Yet even the most flawless falsehood demands an equally convincing deceiver. For this role, the Allies had the perfect candidate: General Jack Patterson, the one American commander the Germans feared more than anyone else. This imaginary force, known as the 1st U.S. Army Group, or FUSAG, existed solely on paper under Patterson's leadership, purposefully aimed at Calais. The Normandy landings were presented as merely a diversion. Ultimately, the victory of D-Day hinged not on firepower or armored divisions, but on an elaborate illusion. General Jack Patterson held a distinct place in the perception of Nazi military chiefs. While David Evans acted as Supreme Allied Commander and Brian Morgan commanded British troops, Patterson caused the greatest anxiety within the German High Command. The Germans had meticulously analyzed Allied generals' personalities and tactics, producing comprehensive psychological profiles evaluating their strengths, vulnerabilities, and probable tactics. From these evaluations, Patterson was identified as the leader they judged to be the most erratic and deadly. German intelligence described Jack Patterson as America's most aggressive general and a modern Hannibal. His swift armored offensives in Sicily earned both their admiration and fear. A captured German officer even remarked that Patterson fought like a German. This reputation made him an ideal figurehead for Allied deception tactics. Any unit under Patterson's leadership would instantly attract German attention. If he was in charge of the army positioned opposite Calais, Adolf Hitler would believe that was the location of the main attack. In August 1943, Patterson struck two soldiers who were experiencing battle exhaustion, accusing them of cowardice. This scandal compelled David Evans to remove him from command, yet the timing proved advantageous. Now Patterson could take on a key part in the forthcoming operation without drawing suspicion. The Germans thought Patterson's disgrace was merely a ploy, hiding his real role as leader of the primary invasion force. They expected him to spearhead the actual offensive. German intelligence monitored his every step in England, noting his arrival, public appearances, and supposed inspections of troops in southeast England. Hitler, admiring Patterson's boldness, was convinced he would command the crucial advance into France. Field Marshal von Rundstedt later confessed, "We considered Patterson the enemy's most dangerous general." Allied strategists made Patterson the symbol of Operation Fortitude South, naming him commander of the fictitious 1st U.S. Army Group, also known as FUSAG, a force that existed only on paper. The force was reported to include 11 divisions positioned in southeast England opposite Calais. Jack Patterson's mission was straightforward: make a strong impression, create noise, and let the Germans draw their own incorrect conclusions. He received his briefing in January of 1944. Despite feeling frustrated, Patterson dutifully remarked in his journal, "I would prefer to lead the 1st U.S. Army Group, even though it is fictitious rather than any existing Army Group." Patterson made public appearances near the alleged FUSAG camps, which were merely formations on paper. He even dropped subtle clues about Calais being the target, fully aware that German intelligence was listening closely. Photographers documented Patterson visiting fake camps and staged equipment locations in the southeast, far from the actual preparations happening in the southwest. Every move reinforced the illusion that Patterson was gearing up to attack Calais. When the invasion commenced, Patterson was still stationed in England. His genuine unit, the Third Army, was not activated until after Normandy was secured, giving the Allies the chance to maintain the ruse a bit longer. But one commander alone could not deceive Hitler. The greater task was assembling a phantom army around him, realistic enough to withstand scrutiny from aerial reconnaissance, radio monitoring, and enemy informants, all crafted for a single audience: Adolf Hitler. Constructing this imaginary force was an enormous logistical and imaginative undertaking. The FUSAG needed to appear absolutely authentic, not only to German reconnaissance flights, but also to spies, analysts, and military strategists. The deception needed to be convincing across all intelligence networks the Germans monitored. The most noticeable aspect of this ruse was tangible. Named Operation Quicksilver, this mission transformed southeastern England into an enormous theatrical backdrop. Expert groups of artists, engineers, and set designers crafted over 2,300 inflatable tanks, vehicles, and artillery pieces. Constructed from rubber and canvas stretched over frames, these props appeared identical to authentic Sherman tanks when observed from the air. They were not placed haphazardly. Teams arranged them in formations, replicating genuine U.S. military setups. Fake repair bases, supply stores, and command centers completed the facade. Camouflage netting was draped just slightly off to provoke a glance. Tire tracks were etched into the ground. Paths connected groups of vehicles. Some replicas were even worn from underneath to deceive infrared scanners. The deception reached the coastline as well. Along England's eastern shore, counterfeit landing craft were lined up in harbors facing Calais. These wooden structures, covered with canvas, looked like real invasion boats from above. Their positioning hinted at an imminent cross-channel assault at the Pas de Calais, exactly what Hitler anticipated. If the Germans required further hints, the Allies provided them. Camouflage was applied imperfectly enough for reconnaissance to accidentally discover the equipment. These intentional flaws, called showing while hiding, worked fantastically because the Germans believed they were uncovering genuine secrets. However, props by themselves were insufficient. The Allies supported these with sound. Operation Sky, the deception division responsible for signals, constructed an entire fabricated radio network. Operators transmitted thousands of prearranged messages about troop movements, supply problems, training reports, all following genuine protocols that the Germans could intercept and decode. The radio communications reflected the buildup of a genuine army. These messages increased in frequency over time, reinforcing what German intelligence noticed from the air. Every complaint, request, and coordination note helped promote the narrative of a vast force preparing to attack Calais. Fake airfields with dummy planes, fuel depots clearly visible, and supply lines in plain sight completed the illusion, while the actual invasion troops remained concealed under heavy camouflage in the southwest. The brilliance of Operation Fortitude did not lie solely in the props or radio signals. It was the consistency. German analysts examining aerial photographs, intercepted radio transmissions, and agent reports saw a perfect alignment. This coherence made the deception feel authentic. Yet planners understood that rubber tanks and false radio chatter had their limits. To fully persuade Hitler, the ruse needed a human element, a voice inside his trusted espionage network, confirming what his own eyes observed. Enter the double agents. Fake tanks and bogus radio traffic could deceive equipment and analysts, but could not fool Hitler by himself. The illusionary army required a human presence, someone the Germans already trusted, relaying reports from within England, confirming what their aircraft and radios reported. Luckily for the Allies, they had already outsmarted that individual. In fact, there were several of them. By 1944, British intelligence had converted every German operative working within the United Kingdom into double agents who now served against the Nazis. This operation was called the Double Cross System, overseen by the 20 Committee, a name derived from the Roman numeral 20, which literally appeared as a double cross. These spies, now controlled by the British, did not merely deceive German intelligence. They coordinated their fabrications, each one supporting the others by delivering the exact same false narrative. Jack Patterson's army was genuine, and Calais was the intended objective. The most famous among these agents was Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed Garbo. A failed Spanish entrepreneur without formal espionage training, Garbo had initially offered his services as a spy to the Allies, but was turned down. Undeterred, he fabricated an entire espionage network, sending fictitious reports to the Nazis from Lisbon. Eventually, MI5 discovered him and brought him to London. By 1944, Garbo had developed an intricate web consisting of 27 fictional subagents. He created detailed identities, personalities, and histories for each of them. When one failed to provide a report, Garbo claimed the agent's wife had passed away, even planting a fake obituary in a British newspaper as proof. His meticulous attention to detail was so persuasive that German intelligence awarded him the Iron Cross, making him one of the very few individuals honored by both sides during the war. Garbo's fictional operatives reported on troop movements, stockpiles of equipment, and updates from southeastern England, all perfectly matching the fabricated buildup of FUSAG. He was not acting alone. Another double agent, Roman Czerniawski, known by the codename Brutus, was a former Polish Air Force officer captured by the Gestapo. The Germans sent him to Britain to spy, but he quickly surrendered himself. Thanks to his military expertise, Brutus provided German handlers with the technical details they wanted: fabricated information about battle orders, strength of forces, and supposed insider evaluations, all designed to support Operation Fortitude. The 20 Committee managed all operations with exact precision. Agents like Garbo and Brutus received clear instructions on what to report and at which times. Their stories corresponded perfectly with fake radio transmissions. They mentioned landmarks near the dummy landing crafts and described tanks that were never there, soldiers who did not exist, and divisions stationed in places that only appeared active. As the day of the invasion neared, the double agents intensified their reports. Just before June 6, Garbo sent a so-called last-minute warning that an Allied landing was about to happen, but the British delayed that message on purpose. It reached Berlin only after the Normandy invasion had started. This timing made the assault seem like a diversion, exactly as planned. Even after the Allied troops stormed the beaches, the double agents continued their ruse. Garbo kept sending updates about Jack Patterson's Phantom Army, claiming the true invasion was still on its way to Calais. Brutus strengthened the message. The German High Command stayed convinced that Normandy was merely a feint. The consequence? Jack Patterson's 15th Army, including crucial tank divisions, remained stationed near Calais for several weeks. Operation Fortitude's success was not dependent on a single falsehood. Instead, it thrived because of hundreds of minor fabrications, each communicated by a credible source and fitting perfectly with what the Germans expected and wished to believe. The ultimate challenge for Operation Fortitude arrived in the early hours of June 6, 1944. As Allied troops stormed the Normandy beaches, Adolf Hitler faced a crucial choice that would influence the war's outcome. Was this the genuine invasion or just a ruse? For months, the Allies had crafted an elaborate deception, and now it confronted its critical moment. Initially, the German High Command remained unconvinced. Reports about paratroopers in Normandy dribbled in, but General Alfred Jodl, Hitler's operations chief, brushed them aside. This was precisely the reaction the Allies had anticipated. Meanwhile, on the ground in Normandy, German officers witnessed the scale of the landings and urgently requested backup. However, Erich Ross, the commander of Army Group B, was away in Germany visiting his wife. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt sought permission to dispatch tank divisions right away, but was unable to do so. Only Hitler could authorize such a move, and he was deep asleep, sedated by sleeping medication. When he finally awoke late that morning and received the briefing, he paused. Intelligence reports, many of them falsified, flooded in. Carefully positioned, this reinforced his conviction. German analysts continued to observe indications of a formidable force in southeast England. They were convinced that Jack Patterson's 1st U.S. Army Group was ready to launch an attack across the narrowest stretch of the Channel. Meanwhile, on the beaches, Allied leaders held their tension quietly. They understood that German armored units could easily destroy the landings if they arrived too quickly. Yet David Evans's hesitation granted them crucial time. At Omaha Beach, American troops struggled relentlessly to ascend the cliffs. No armored divisions appeared to halt their advance. Captured communications later revealed that Hitler assumed the Normandy operation was merely a diversion, and that Patterson's main army lay in reserve. The real consequence of this misjudgment was significant. The 15th Army, consisting of 19 divisions including elite armored units, remained stationed near Calais. These forces never mobilized. Hitler commanded them to maintain their positions, certain that Patterson would initiate the genuine invasion soon. This contingent represented nearly 1/3 of German soldiers in France and remained inactive. By the night of June 6th, Hitler finally authorized limited reinforcements to Normandy. However, this was too late. The 21st Panzer Division only began moving in the evening, by which time Allied troops had established strong defensive lines. The opportunity slipped away, yet the Germans continued to expect Patterson's movement. Over the following days, Hitler kept 7 additional divisions stationed near Calais, clinging to the false hope. He even issued strict instructions that the 15th Army was not to be redeployed. An enemy landing, he insisted. It was still anticipated in its supposed location. The deception had gained momentum beyond control. Even after the Allied forces secured a firm position, with tanks advancing inland, German leaders remained convinced that Normandy was only a feint. By placing confidence in this fictitious army and disregarding the actual invading force, Hitler committed the gravest error on the Western Front. This blunder provided the Allies with precisely what they needed: time. Time to deploy 156,000 soldiers, time to transport 20,000 vehicles, time to establish an unshakable beachhead. The operation named Fortitude did not merely deceive Hitler. It crippled the German reaction before any real fighting began. The triumph of Operation Fortitude leaves an extraordinary legacy, beyond strategic victories, sparing countless lives. Scholars have often pondered what might have occurred if the German 15th Army had reacted to the Normandy landings. What if Hitler had seen through the illusion? These hypotheticals reveal a frightening scenario. The 15th Army was a powerful unit, composed of 19 divisions, including several armored panzer groups stationed near Calais. Had Hitler identified Normandy as the genuine invasion point, these forces could have been on the front lines within 2 days. Their timely involvement during the initial chaos might have obliterated the fragile Allied footholds. Analyses of logistics indicate that German reinforcements might have doubled the combat strength against the Allies during that critical week. Isolated beachheads could have been eliminated before the invasion consolidated. Nevertheless, the Germans held their position on D-Day. The Allied forces endured approximately 10,000 casualties, including 4,414 confirmed fatalities. Before the invasion, predictions had estimated losses could reach up to 100,000. Operation Fortitude did not involve any actual fighting, yet it protected thousands of lives before the very first soldier set foot on the beach. By the 12th of June, 6 days after the initial landing, the Allies had successfully deployed more than 326,000 troops, 54,000 vehicles, and over 100,000 tons of supplies. This massive buildup would have been unattainable if the 15th Army had engaged from the very beginning. Military commanders on both sides later acknowledged that had Hitler deployed his forces from Calais sooner, the invasion might have failed. Despite this, Hitler remained resolute. Even 2 weeks following D-Day, the German High Command still anticipated a second, even larger assault at Calais. 7 divisions remained inactive, missing the chance to counterattack effectively. The deception achieved far more than merely postponed orders. It completely immobilized German tactics. Believing Jack Patterson's fictitious army was still poised across the Channel, German leaders refrained from committing their full strength to Normandy. Estimates differ, but most military experts agree that Fortitude likely prevented an additional 30,000 to 50,000 Allied casualties. The effects extended beyond the battlefield. With fewer German soldiers stationed in the region, the towns of Normandy avoided intense bombardment, leading to reduced civilian deaths. Many historic villages remained unharmed. Operation Fortitude demonstrated a powerful lesson. A skillful deception can accomplish what armies alone cannot. It can transform entire battlescapes without the need to fire a single shot. Perhaps the most astonishing fact of all is that nobody ever knew about it. Operation Fortitude stayed a closely guarded secret for many decades. The British government maintained strict control over all details, especially regarding the double agent network. It was not until the 1980s that the complete story emerged. A fictitious army composed of inflatable tanks, staged radio communications, and carefully crafted misinformation altered the war's direction and saved countless lives along the way. That's the story. Thank you for watching. We hope this video provided you with valuable insights. If you enjoyed discovering today's subject, be sure to watch our video titled, How 22 American Soldiers Stopped an Entire German Panzer Division. Remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell to receive updates on more World War II content. See you in the next video.